under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the consent agenda, which includes the agenda itself and the minutes from the August 14th meeting and the August 24th special board meeting. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Citizens' comments are up next. Do you have any citizens? Comments, we have citizens, but it's okay. That was in honor of Mr. Alverstein. I was trying to be a little funny.
Well,
I felt cloud in his face.
well done. I apologize. The hot rod show limited my ability to find a parking spot.
Doing some shopping?
What's that?
Doing some shopping?
Yeah. There's a couple of nice Corvettes there.
Yeah.
Looking under the hood. They had an engine.
My car also has an engine.
That's why I said that was the extent of my knowledge. Just like when I get it fixed, it's broken.
All right, hearing no citizens' comments, we'll move on to the finance report.
Okay. So first, I just want you to note that the finance reports are quite a bit longer. And this is so we can provide you with all of the most accurate and transparency possible with our current accounting software, which isn't exactly what we would like it to be, but it is the best we can do. Please also note that the financial reports are printed front to back to cut down on costs and in our endeavor to be better stewards of the funds entrusted to us. So you'll notice that all of our current balances are listed on page 1 of all of our different bank accounts. Our gross profit as of August 31st is $2,733,772.10. And where a lion's share of the bulk of the new finance reports are coming in is to give you a better idea with the expenditures. And total expenditures as of the 31st are $2,905,684.03. And total accounts receivable is $65,154.69. As always, you have the check detail report, but your very last report this month is a bank reconciliation report. And on that reconciliation report, you'll notice that on August 21st, 2023, there is a deposit of $150,000, and this is our Keystone grant.
What page was that on, Tracy?
That is on the first page of the very last report. It's very tiny.
It's your very tiny report.
It's very tiny.
On the check detail, some of the checks are self-explanatory because the vendor is obvious. Some of the checks are less self-explanatory, particularly if the check is written to an employee. Is there a possibility of getting a memo on those checks?
Yeah, so we do actually put in the memo what those checks are for. Unfortunately, they don't print on the report, but I would be happy to get that information for you. If you'd like me to email it to you, I'm happy to do that.
Or going forward, I know as we transition to the new software package, that would be something to...
We're told that will be
Okay.
something that will be alleviated with the
Okay.
new program. So,
Perfect.
but yeah, if you would like to know, I would be happy to answer that for you.
Any questions on the financials? So I look to my financial guy. Anything?
No, nothing.
All right. Anyone
Not
else?
this week.
Not this week. Hearing no questions, is there a motion to accept the financial reports as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All's in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, on to item D, report of the executive director, the rehabilitation report first.
All right, so in front of you is the rehabilitation report. As of August 31st, we've completed 64 LHRD projects. Under the ARPA Healthy Homes, still moving forward there. We have 34 projects completed with another 44 in the hopper. Finishing up our last city CDBG project should be completed here in coming days. That'll complete that contract. And just as a reminder, we don't have a CDBG contract for this year. Continuing to work with them on the home. The county projects, we're working through that. I don't know if the board had seen, the county issued a press release a couple weeks back that brought in a slew of online applications, somewhere around about 130. Majority of those being City of Erie residents, so it certainly helped our coffers as far as applicants into the program, along with getting some of those county residents. So we're working through vetting those out as far as eligibility and moving forward with those, along with, that's the whole home repair program and the Act 137 program. So that's the rehabilitation report.
Any questions on that? Hearing none, we'll move on to your general updates.
All right. So the Black Bod contract, that August 24th meeting, the board approved that. We signed the contracts with Black Bod. We have our onboarding and planning call scheduled for this Wednesday, so we'll get that initially kicked off so that we can move forward with the implementation of that program with, as we said, the anticipated implementation by January 1st for our fiscal year. April completed her DIB certification, so as of the end of August, she's certified DEIB. Don't ask, it's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So that she's completed that, and Tracy's working on completing hers as well. On August 17th, we had HUD perform an audit of our LHRD grants, the first time in over 10 years that HUD has wanted to do an on-site visit. Unfortunately, they canceled the on-site visit and we went virtual. So they completed an audit. We provided them files, some financial documentation. So we sat through that for 3 hours on August 17th. They reviewed everything. They had no major issues with anything within the authority and our operation. They gave us accolades for our file preparation and the way that we do our documentation. So that's good. So that was good. We did talk through modifications to our current grant, given the current situation in the economy, costs, runs, and everything of that. So we're going to make some modifications to the budget, lower our unit outcome, increase our per unit cost, and move some of that around to make the grant successful. They certainly want us to be successful and apply during the next NOFA year for continuing funding. So that was very good. CDBG audit was done last Tuesday from the City DECD office. Haven't heard back as far as what their findings and corrective actions are there, but we'll get that hopefully here by the end of this week. We met with another a health insurance broker to review the authority's health insurance. Currently, the authority's health insurance plan is grandmothered in Pre-Affordable Care Act, so every year our costs continue to go up $10,000, $12,000. So we're going to look at what our options are to choose another plan, provide somewhat the same level of insurance that we have now, but give some savings back to the authority. One more. So I mentioned last month as far as historic improvement grant, we have met with them. The HRC meeting was going on this afternoon. We're tabling a lot of projects right now. We're going to meet and have a study session with the HRC later on this month to review some of the materials and some of the guidelines as far as giving them a little bit more ability to make some recommendations for applicants for grant funding, so that we have a little bit more clarity. There's been some backlash as far as some of the projects that have been approved and why they were approved, and so we're just going to work with them, and we're slowing that project down. We're going to stop. We're going to retool before we fully allocate all of our money to make sure we're as good a stewards of that funding as possible. So there was a project, and I don't know how many board members received feedback from Mr. Adams for his project on Balboa Street. HRC had that on their agenda in May, I believe it was. They tabled that. They never gave approval on that, yet he proceeded with the project and completed it and then asked for reimbursement. So the project was never approved, so the HRC today reiterated that it specifically says in the guidelines that we will not approve a project that was not approved prior to completion. So since their records indicate that it was tabled, the project is denied. He, however, did submit another application for his project next door, so they're currently reviewing that one and working with him on that as well. So that's my report.
So put in no findings or concerns for the LHRB grant.
No findings or concerns.
Usually they try and find at least something. So
They try very hard.
That's fantastic.
So, Mr. Stiver, maybe at our next meeting, we can get a little bit of an update as to where we are on the various ARP programs and kind of, which programs have been released, where the status of the ones that haven't been released yet. And
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that'd be good for next. Because I don't think we have any updates on today's agenda, but if we can have something for next month, I think that would be good.
Yeah, we'll put together a comprehensive report for the board.
All right. Anything else for Mr. Snippert?
That is all for now.
Great. Mr. Sundberg, would you care to join us? And thank you for submitting your report early. I
Good
memorized
afternoon,
it.
Board.
No, not quite memorized it, but I did read it.
My eyes have been dilated, so you can now see how vain I am and why I never wear glasses. Because I can't, I'm completely blind, and now they've dilated my pupils, so what I'd like to be able to
Should we
say,
turn the lights
please
down
read
for
my
you?"
memorandum, because I can't. But what I wanted to do is to as the board's been aware, it's taken me 6+ months to find a good paralegal. Tina decided that she wanted to retire and was going to work part-time. And then when you look at this report, you can see it's not a part-time job. This is a full-time job. We're happy to do it and to be a part of it. But I now have an excellent paralegal. She is keeping me on track, and we are dragging everything forward to our best interest. I'll just hit a couple of highlights. Headlights I can't see, but highlights. Watford and Easterling, we're still waiting. I against my own kind of better judgment, I contacted the Commonwealth Court and was as nice as I could be. Like, what are we waiting on here? So they said that it's in process. We will be happy with the result, but they're gonna return the docket to us so that we can have the valuation hearing on both of these and be done with these properties. Zach Associates, we're waiting for the local judge. Locust Court was the one action where we actually were headed toward a board of view. And then there was an amicable resolution. The deed was received last week. It's now been filed. So we're in good shape. We're in good shape there. Happy to turn that over. Hopeful Domes and AJ Adams, they're on track. Thank you to everybody here to help me get an updated appraisal on the one property on West 16th Street. The Nettles matter, you can read that, pretty straightforward. There were some preliminary objections that were filed on the last batch. I'm working and going to be working with Aaron to determine how best to approach those. whether we're gonna work with these people or whether we're just gonna keep dragging them forward. It'll be determinative on what the condition on the interior of those houses are gonna be. Just hitting a couple of other ones. Buffalo Road, that's been a long thorn in everybody's side here. We're getting that done. They have agreed to get us a deed to take that, to take care of that. I've met with the attorney on at least one occasion on site, but too many other times to even mention, in an attempt to try to convince him that it's the right thing to do, and that's what's happening now. You can see the rest of them if you review those. That would be great. And that's we have also been successful in getting some people to voluntarily deed the property to us, so we're working on that. It's great to have it, but then when they voluntarily deed it to us, it's kind of like having a mini closings, because you got to find out what the situation is with the real estate taxes. There's going to be transfer taxes based upon the assessed value, which is obviously way more than what it's actually worth. But the fact that they're saying, okay, we'll voluntarily relinquish it to you, we prepare the deed, it's still having work done in-house to kind of prepare a smaller or pseudo closing statement and making sure that everything's taken care of. So with the new addition of the paralegal, we're going to be able to effectuate that, because it was otherwise falling upon the real estate department, which had a lot going on already. So I think we're in a really good place. My intent, and with my new paralegal, you will be receiving these on a regular basis. You'll be receiving them ahead of time. It's going to be an enormous amount of information because there's so much coming through, which is great. And we now have the ability to make sure that we keep up and keep everything current. So with that, I'm done. If you have any questions or problems, by all means, let me know. Thank
Any
you.
questions? No, very thorough. Appreciate your work. Thank you so much. Okay, on to unfinished business, and now my pleasure to welcome back to the stage Miss Kathy Rosnick on her Pennsylvania tour of
Northwest PA. It's my
Northwest
favorite
PA.
place to be. You want me to take it?
Sure,
Okay.
it's all yours.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to see everyone in person. Calls just don't really fit the bill for me anymore. But I wanted to come and you'll see some of the information you've seen before. But we have finalized the report for the East Bayfront Greenway Trail Plan that we started back in December, which I thought was a terrible idea to start a trail plan in the middle of winter, but who knew it was going to be actually a very lovely winter in Erie, Pennsylvania. So we had initially, Michael Baker and our design team from Pittsburgh had initially been contracted to complete the plan for the Redevelopment Authority by March. Which we knew was an ambitious effort, fortunately, and that was because of the coastal zone grant that required it to be completed by March. But we got an extension of the grant through September, and so we're very happy to report that we have finalized the plan and are going to be, I'm just going to do a high-level overview of the plan today. So it has been a very interesting process to be certain. This is not an easy concept for a city or a redevelopment authority to sort of plan for. So we were pleased to be able to help you kind of think through how you would create what was initially the mission was take up to 50 blighted properties and turn it into a greenway system within the Erie's East Bayfront, Lower East Side. As you may recall, some of you have been in and around the Erie Refocus, the city's comprehensive plan. when it was completed in 2015, this idea actually came out of the city's comprehensive plan for the Lower East Side as a way to address the the abundance of blighted and abandoned properties that existed in that sector. Fast forward to 2018, the Schember administration and their new planning director and soon-to-be neighborhood planner actually went back and revisited that idea and created a neighborhood strategic plan that also validated the idea of creating a park or a greenway in lieu of blighted properties for the East Bay front. And the mission was, can we do something more than just leave vacant lots after demolition of blighted properties and create an amenity and asset that would help stabilize this neighborhood? And so that's what the overall mission of this plan was, is how to work with the Redevelopment Authority, who's essentially charged, as you have all been made very well aware of your time on the board, been charged with dealing with blighted homes and blighted properties. So just to refresh, these are recommendations out of Area Refocused for East Bay Front. This Area Refocused highly or leveraged the housing property conditions throughout the city to come up with strategies and interventions. And so this is that East Bayfront neighborhood, which includes, as you may recall, Bayfront Eastside Task Force footprint, Snoops, and then the area between those two neighborhoods, which in past practice have been called the donut hole because there was at the time, a lack of effort and energy and an organization working there. So this actually specifically, again, said right size, clean and green, and use targeted demolition to create to help stabilize this neighborhood. There's that recommendation specifically that was then translated into what you now have as a very specific plan of how to do that. And we'll talk about the area of focus. We were not looking at this entire area. We wanted to focus on areas, sub-areas of the neighborhood that had the highest concentrations of blighted properties. And we used locally created data to figure out exactly where that focus would be. The process, as I just enumerated, has been years in the making. We also utilized a 2020 created neighborhood property conditions survey, which I'll show you a dashboard. You have seen it in the past, but we utilized that to sort of really do a parcel by parcel analysis of where this is able to be accomplished. Redevelopment Authority was awarded a coastal zone management grant for design of the plan, and then the city allocated, was it $1.5 million in ARPA funding to actually execute the plan once it's done, which is almost unheard of to actually have funding to implement plans, but you do have that available to you. Here's that dashboard that shows the entire city broken down into neighborhood areas. And this is just this, it shows a number of different components of housing and the housing stock. Red and orange are the ones that are in highest distressed areas, and the green is where homes are actually being maintained and are in pretty good shape. Everyone hopefully can orient themselves to where this is, and you can see clearly where the highest concentrations of blighted property, where you see red and orange. So this data, Kevin, you had asked about. This data is a little old and could be updated. So there's the time that this was done years ago, 3 or 4 years ago now, over 458 properties were seen as vacant. Nearly 300 were unsound, so ready to be blighted and demolished throughout the city. But the highest concentration of those were in this focus area, and that's where we focused our efforts. The entire process started with meetings with residents. There was significant interest by residents to bring them together and talk about this idea. We wanted to make sure that we brought people together close to or within the neighborhood that would be most impacted, So we did host these Nate design charrettes with our design hub team. Not necessarily in the neighborhood because there wasn't a good facility, but just outside the neighborhood. We had a steering committee composed of multiple departments from the city, including the Redevelopment Authority, and the Coastal Zone Coordinator was also there. But we had Public Works, traffic engineering, because we were looking at the impacts of streets and road networks, parks, the mayor's office, code enforcement was a big participant in this neighborhood planning, as well as the ARPA coordinator and the CBCR, which is a community-based crime reduction coordinator. Say that 5 times fast. So we met with the steering committee at least 4 times throughout the process. And we had 2 sets of design charrettes in December, one in the early afternoon and one in the evening. We had about 40 or so people attend. Unfortunately, there wasn't a large number of residents who came. We got other people who were very interested, concerned, curious, and I think we had a couple of board members who came to learn about what this plan would entail. Then in February we came back. We met specifically with Erie Police Department. We had another design charrette. We also presented to the Redevelopment Authority. The second round of design charrettes, this was, we had one, but we had it with we just invited residents because we really wanted to hear what their concerns were with this adjacent property being turned into a park. How does that impact you? Do you think if it's a good idea, why do you think it's a good idea? And what problems do you think it might be associated? So we had a really, even though there were about 10 or so residents who showed up, it was really good feedback, and they spoke from their heart, and we heard overwhelmingly, this is a good thing. We would rather have maintained green space and walkability in our neighborhood than a blighted home. But they gave us some very specific direction. In March and April, and the reason we needed a little extra time, because the property conditions analysis was a little old, we wanted, and the Redevelopment Authority, of course, wanted to know which specific properties would be the most eligible to turn into a greenway system, to become part of a park. They asked the Code Enforcement Office to go back out and do a refresh of the property conditions to really analyze which ones are truly vacant and which ones have, some of them may have been improved, and they found those cases. So we modified the plan based on that, and then worked on final design. It's a little hard to see, but I wanted to show, this is sort of what came out of the discussions, because what we were this is the focus area. The focus area, and it's a little hard to see again, it's East 6th to Parade, down to 12th, East 12th, over to the Bayfront. So it's, again, what we're unfortunately, years ago we called the donut hole, but that's essentially what it represented. And what came out of the conversations, not only with the residents, but we did meet individually with stakeholders. So we met with Jeremy Blazer with Bayfront Eastside Task Force. We met with Tim Shannon with the Eastside Renaissance, ESR, Eastside Renaissance, right? And we really wanted to know, a greenway is supposed to connect people to places of interest. And so what were those places of interest? And that, of course, bubbled up as we want to be connected to parks and have safe access to existing parks. We want access to Parade Street, which is our employment center, our retail center, and we want safe access to and from our schools. So that would be East Middle School and Piper Burley, and adjacent parks. What came out of it too is MCRC, which is at East 10th and Ash, became sort of a natural center of this community because it's almost physically located in the center of this focus area. So we kind of played off of that. That's our center. How do we radiate and connect from this greenway from MCRC or Ash and East 10th to all of these places of interest? And then all of that came out of, here's an example of our design charrettes. So some of the concerns on top of connect people to places was the natural connectors, our roads and our alleyways, need to be part of this greenway. They naturally, that's how you connect vacant lots between vacant lots, is you have to rely on roads and alleyways. We want them to be well-designed, well-lit, and safe. We want to make sure that this is not something that creates and encourages people to come and do illicit activities because it's now a public park and they feel like they can just come and do whatever they want there. The timing of property acquisition and the logistics of that was very much a concern that we had to address. Access to bus stops, how do you, as a homeowner, as a property owner, how do you delineate the park from my backyard? It was, I think, a great question. And things like that. So, and there was also a desire to have native plantings and create spaces that really brought people together instead of, just sort of creating the opportunity to create community. And we relied heavily on data, so we looked at what's the low-hanging fruit properties. I wish this, what we were hoping is there would be higher concentrations of grouped properties. And what the map on the left shows is these are all properties that are what we would call low-hanging fruit. Are they owned by the Redevelopment Authority? Or are they owned by the land bank? Are they in the repository? So ones that would already be naturally easy to acquire and create a park. You can see it's still a bit scattered. We don't have really good concentrations that would create meaningful spaces. But we worked with what we had. The illustration on the right kind of shows how we were, okay, if we were to meander, how do we create this sort of linear connection between the neighborhoods? We actually had early renditions of let's close some roadways and make them a cohesive part of the park and make a larger greenway system. We did attempt to propose that and from all angles, thinking this was to be a very creative space. Pretty much from every angle, including residents, they said, do not close our roadways. Police did not want them closed. Residents did not want them closed. Public Works did not want them closed. So we backed off of that, that iteration. But we did try. We tried to be aspirational. But we understand the concerns from doing some those things. So this is everything that we sort of looked at. Another aspect of this, so the illustration on the right is a much broader and larger concept. There were I think that does represent at least 50 properties, and it goes all the way down to 12th Street. You can see in sort of that middle that kind of looks like a necklace. That's MCRC, Ash and 10th. We were really hyper-focused on that. We looked at ways to connect large sections of vacant property from one block to the next to create that sort of meandering greenway. But the challenge with this, and what was shown on the left-hand side, the purple and the green, is it would rely on property that's not low-hanging fruit, right? It's property that's unsound, but perhaps has not gone through the blight process. There is, let's call it a policy issue of some of these are registered rentals. We don't know if they're occupied. We don't know their status, but they are in the registered rental program. So it was just seen as this is going to be just too challenging for us to try to incorporate into this, I agree, concept of a greenway at this moment. The policy, the logistics, the displacement was certainly not something we wanted to consider and focus on. Although it did bring up an issue of maybe we should look at the rental registration program a little bit deeper and determine if there's something being missed with that program, if the intent is to ensure that properties are well maintained. Clearly, this would indicate that that's not the case in some of these instances. But I just wanted to show you how we sort of went to a larger, broader concept, and then through the sort of the iteration, what we came up with, though, is something a little more modest, but I think it's a great step. And this is the final design concept. And what you have here, you see a lot of streetscape improvements. And that really came out of the desire for the residents to have safe connections to really these key corridors of East 6th and East 10th. So you see a lot of heavy streetscape on East 10th and East 6th. There's a proposal for a dedicated bike and pedestrian pathway along both of those. They would be separated, it would not be on street. It would be a 10-foot separated path along to replace the sidewalk. A lot of landscaping. There is a total of 14 properties that would be connected through this, so you can see that represented. Those are all low-hanging fruit properties. And I won't speak for the Redevelopment Authority, but our conversation of, well, this gives us sort of like the skeletal structure, and we can just add on as more properties are required, we can just add those to this infrastructure, which I think makes a lot of sense. Where between 7th and East 7th and East 8th, sort of up towards the top there, you see that we actually utilize alleyways as a way to connect some of our properties. So it's here. And so that would include, and we do have a detail of what that would look like. And we also have details, close-up details of improvements to the intersections, what the pathway along 6th Street looks like, and the lighting. So we did utilize and rely heavily on the alleyway as a way to safely connect some of these properties, and we think that that's a model that could be used elsewhere. The city does have some concerns about encouraging pedestrians to use alleyways, but it was thought that since this is such a low volume alleyway, it would be a safe way to connect. So this is the Greenway concept. Again, it's only 14 properties, but you can see there's heavy emphasis on streetscape and utilizing that as the connector between the properties. I sort of already went over this, but it's 14 vacant lots that are utilized to create the green space. Streets and alleys are the connectors. There's lots of pedestrian-oriented lighting used to delineate, define the greenway. All pathways that you see here, that you saw in the previous plan, include upgrades to that would either be new or existing sidewalks, and native plantings are also recommended for the greenway. In addition, we did a high-level cost of implementation. So in total, what you saw on the screen before, this would be about a $2.7 million project. As you may recall, the city gave you $1.5 million, so there's about $1.2 million shortfall from what the city has allocated. But what this does set you up now to do is to go after additional grant funding, and I think that's already been done. We actually had given Aaron an earlier rendition of this for an application that they applied for in July. But I think that this was not an easy project. You had a lot, because it depends, you don't have ownership of all of the property. You don't have 10 acres to say, okay, well, how do we plan 10 acres that we own, right? You've got all of these different interests and stakeholders that you have to deal with. The city is a big player in all of this. So it did take a lot of time to sort of think through what comfort level everyone has. But honestly, I think what excites me most is once this is deployed and people are able to see what this is able to do, you'll start, I think you've created something that can continue not only in the East Bayfront neighborhood, but you can continue this to connect other neighborhoods that are also have sort of struggling needs with blighted properties. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I do have some some copies for you. I'll leave those with Aaron. And like I said, this is the first draft. I'm sure I'll get comments back from Aaron's, and refine it a little bit. But as I said, at least you have this ready for the coastal zone grant deadline at the end of the month. Any questions for me, or?
Two quick questions, maybe not too quick. Traffic calming, I guess, I was obviously involved in some of the steering committee meetings, but where did kind of that land with how to calm some of the people zipping through the streets, especially where there are pedestrian crossings?
Yeah, so, and I'm sorry, you can't really see, I don't know if I can zoom, I'm a little afraid to zoom in on this, but in this large block right here, we do have curb bulb outs to sort of narrow the roadway. Traffic calming would have also come from closing roads, but again, we had to back off of that. So these bulb outs is where, particularly at on East 10th Street is where, because that's sort of that central area, East 10th and Ash, and there's also 9th and Ash. So anywhere, and they actually have a little bit of realignment here. So you do, it's hard to see at this level, but you do have in those areas these bulb outs to help slow traffic where people are crossing or encouraged to cross.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question has to do with long-term maintenance, especially with the alleyways being, part of the Greenway Trail. Is Public Works going to be clearing the alleyways even in the winter? I guess just wanted to make sure that there is a plan in there and buy-in from Public Works that they're actually going to commit to maintaining this stuff.
And I think that's a great question that you'd have to pose. Again, that's the complexity of doing something that you're not the sole owner and controller of. Is we'd need Public Works we need the city to commit to maintaining this as a public park would be maintained as best they can. Right now, they do not, because of budgetary issues, they do not maintain alleyways typically. But in this case, we're now turning this into an extension of what we would call a park system. So that would have to be part and parcel of what's done. In addition, right, then you also have the pathways that are now on 10th and 6th, where you're encouraging not only pedestrians but cyclists to use them. So there needs to be a thought of how does Public Works then help maintain something that's traditionally required or put on the property owner to clear. So we haven't really come to terms with how that's going to work, but when you deal with an urban design like this, you have to work within the public right of way, and that's just part of. We couldn't do anything around that, nor should we have. But those are all very good points and things that will have to be figured out as this plan is implemented.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate the work of you and your team. This has been fun to watch.
It'll be fun to watch its implementation too. So
Yeah,
indeed. Hopefully it gets done. Thank you.
Great. All right, on to the item 2, blighted property acquisition industrial.
All right, so in front of you is a resolution for the board to move forward with the acquisition condemnation of a parcel. This is an industrial parcel. If you recall, several months ago, there were 6 of them on a resolution. This was a stray parcel behind Erie Beer off the railroad tracks that was mistakenly left off of that when we started that plan. So we have moved that through to catch it up to the other parcels so that we can move forward with
So
condemnation
this is
of
like
all of them.
15th Street-ish?
This, yes.
Okay.
So I was just looking for the board to,
So this is just adding an additional parcel to the larger one?
yes, this will make the entire group 7 parcels in total between, well, it's plum to raspberry.
Okay. And once our work is done, then this gets transferred to your county
Yes,
redevelopment
that is
authority
the
for
plan,
their,
and
for
then
their
they're working with
industrial
a
work. Then.
client on their end for moving it after that.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Snippert? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the resolution as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, we have a resolution for fiscal management advisory services. Maybe
All
you
right.
could remind us a little bit about the background of the nature of the contract.
Absolutely. So as you recall, back last year, we put an RFP out for a fiscal advisor, a consultant to help assist with answering those questions. As you know, the turnover within the authority, and specifically in the finance office, has been substantial over the years. And so there's just things that have been passed down and changed under each person's tenure that may not necessarily be the right way. And we want to make sure that we give the finance office the ability to do things that would fit in line with the requirements of the federal regulations and all the different grants that we do. So we had that RFP out last year. Twice we received no response. So this year when we put out the HR, we put the fiscal one out as well. This time we were fortunate enough to get 2 responses to it. One from 3i Networking LLC and the other one from Baker Tilly for the services to the authority. So like I said, we received 2, and it is my recommendation to award the contract to Baker Tilly US.
And this is kind of an open-ended contract as
Open-ended,
needed.
as needed, kind of as a, if there's something arises, it's based upon, hourly rate. Like it says in their contract, awarded to Baker Tilly for $125 to $395 per hour, based on the accounting complexity. So really just as we move through, we have that consultant to reach out to as we're working through, things that our auditors are looking for, and really as we start to move into implementation of Blackbaud, that we have everything in line and in place so that the authority's finances are in compliance 100%.
I think it's a wise move. So, are there any questions for Mr. Snippert? Is there a motion to accept the resolution as presented?
So moved.
No, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye. Are there any abstains?
Yes.
We practiced. All right, motion carries. Thank you. And finally, Human Resource Consulting Services.
All right, so following conversation with the board several months ago, it was recommended that, the Redevelopment Authority look at finding an HR consultant. We know over the time we have, many things that need to be reviewed and revised, and having that consultant, is a great recommendation. So we put out the RFP for HR consulting services. We received 3 proposals, one from JL Nick, one from Manufacturers and Business Association, and one from CLA Connect. Through all of that, Manufacturers Business Association was the preferred vendor of choice. JL Nick's application was incomplete, so that one couldn't move forward, and everything that Manufacturers and Business Association provided was in line with the RFP and met the requirements of such. So it is our recommendation to award the contract to the Manufacturers and Business Association to move forward with compensation study within the authority, and then to continue to have that HR support to review, items within, our human resources.
Yeah, and I know that April's been working to really shore up her responsibilities and her skills, but this will be one additional level in a growing organization, how important that is to have.
Yes, and certainly free up time that would be spent by staff doing these tasks, using a consultant for it. at that
Absolutely.
point.
Again, I think a wise decision. Thank you. Is there a motion to accept the resolutions presented to invite the Manufacturer Business Association to provide HR services?
So moved.
Is there a second? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstains? Hearing none, motion carries. Item E, is there any other business?
I have no other business.
Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
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 We adjourn at 3:51 p.m. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate it. And once again, thank you for Kathy for your presentation today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Maybe I'll be back.